Just a fairly happy kid. Had friends. I liked to run the streets. In high school, I'd gotten in a lot of trouble.
These Muslims are trying to kill me. Everybody hates Muslims. That if I see a woman in a hijab, or if I see a man wearing sandals and he's dark skinned, don't trust him.
Who is Richard McKinney? Can you tell us briefly about your life?
I was born in California. I grew up with a lot of Christian teachings, as most American children do. I knew about them, but to be honest with you, I was getting this nationalist ideology about me. Religion just didn't play a part. It seemed too mythological, too much hocus pocus, maybe, But I believed in my country. I tell people, for lack of a better example, the flag was my cross. As a teenager, I got involved in a lot of bad things, drugs, and I ran away from home. When I ran away from home, I ended up going and joining the Marine Corps. And I made a very wise decision to get away from all this bad element. I'm going to join the military.
How did this great hatred and anger against Muslims develop in you?
So the last time I was injured, what forced me out of the military, we were in Ramadi in 2006, Ramadi, Iraq. And we did a real quick operation on this building somebody was supposed to be at, a high-ranking, actually it was a high-ranking Al-Qaeda member. And we went there, we were going to grab him and bring him back, hood over the head, zip ties, the whole bit. Well, he wasn't there. Nobody was there. I went up onto the second floor after it was cleared and we were getting ready to leave the building to look out onto the street to make sure everything was okay before I took my team back outside. It's the last thing I remember. There was a huge IED that was underneath the building, and it blew straight up and blew me right out the hole I was looking out of. It was a huge hole in the wall facing the street, and I have no memory of it. So I'm just telling what everybody told me because I don't remember. But it messed me up kind of bad. There were so many things that were just compounded in your head that this is what all these people are doing. These Muslims are trying to kill me. Everybody hates Muslims. So I'm back home now with all these thoughts, all this anger. And I says, there's something that I can do. And I devised a plan. I was still able to get a hold of different components that I could create my own bomb. And in the course of 3 years, that's what I did. I built this thing, the bomb. I took my time. As my planning went on, I was like, well, how am I going to get these guys? Sometimes not a lot of them show up. Ramadan on a Friday afternoon. They're all there. So there was an Islamic center in my hometown. I didn't really know anything about these people. I'd see them. So I had watched this place before and several different times, not just once. I had watched it several different times and saw the flow of people on a Friday and just knowing the behavior of these people and what they're doing. So if I put a bomb here, are they going to find it? So I don't want that to happen. So I had found a place. Nobody ever, for some reason, until I became president of the Islamic Center, nobody walked around that building. Nobody. So on the back side, I found a good place for it. And I was going to put it there, middle of the night before. And there was a bank, I would say probably 2,500 meters away. The plan was to sit over there and wait for the time, because I had found out what time they start, and just dial it in, just watch it.
Weren't you afraid of the consequences of doing something like that?
I had no intention of getting away with it. I knew I was going to be caught. I knew I would go to trial because they would execute me. I was good with that because I wasn't getting my flag draped coffin, but I believed that eventually these same people were going to think of me as a hero because I was right. And my daughter had told me about this Muslim child that she was in school with. and I blew up. So I thought I failed my family because I couldn't protect them. I can't protect her at school from these Muslims. That was my whole thing. I just totally lost it. And my daughter, 7 years old, and she was, the look in her eyes was like she was even questioning whether she even loved me anymore because I was being so racist. You know, after different profanities came out of my mouth, I went up into my bedroom. I kind of sat on the bed and I started to cry a little bit. I said, well, you have to find the proof, man. You know you're right. I believed in myself I was right because they're evil. They want to kill us all, right? But I didn't have any kind of tangible proof to like show my daughter. I didn't have that. So I had to go get it. Where am I going to get it? The mosque. Where else? I did not want to be in that place. So of course I'm a little nervous. And I went in there, I met with them, and I introduced myself as somebody who just wants to learn a little bit more about Islam. Not a total lie, but didn't tell them what my real intentions were. So, you know, I was introduced to several people, talked to several people. It was a Friday, listened to the sermon, the khutbah, right? And I was like, man, that sounds good. They're just saying that because I'm here. I already know. They probably got people held down in the basement for propaganda videos. I already know. I mean, these are the things that are going through my mind, right? And then they handed me a Quran. And I was told to take it home, read it, come back when you have questions. I was so happy because in my mind, I felt like I'd just been handed the holy grail of evil and I'm going to have somebody explain it to me. Wow, that's better than hitting the lottery. I mean, isn't it take no effort on my part? So I did. I did just that. I read it and I went back. I was back a lot. Surprised them. Because here's this non-Muslim coming in. He's all in here all the time. I've been reading. I got these questions. You say come back and ask you. And after a while, it finally came to me that all religions have some sort of a text. And that text is a guidebook to how they're supposed to live their lives. And you're to live as close to that as you can. So I'm reading the things in the Quran. And my impression of Islam is the people that have been shooting at me. And seeing all the horrible things that they were doing, right? It didn't match. So I started to change a little bit. But then I went through stages. Maybe these are the good Muslims. I've heard there's some good Muslims. Maybe these are the ones. Maybe these are the good ones. And as I'm getting introduced to other Muslims and doing research and looking online, my ill feelings started to slowly just dissipate. They just went away. Kill one human being is as if you had killed all of humanity. No. Indiscriminate killing was going on by these people that I had taken my impression of Islam. Keep reading. And then I realized that Islam was really the thing for me. And I didn't take their word for it. Now, when they would tell me that's what this means, I would go back and I'd research it. I'm reading these words, but I'm feeling them too.
So when did you actually say, I have to become a Muslim?
The dreams I had with the blood on the paper target. I was on the rifle range, you know, where you practice shooting, okay? And I was shooting a paper target way down there. It had been a source of looking at my enemies, dehumanization, right? I was dehumanizing my enemies because they were just targets. That was one way of coping with the whole taking of human life, right? I remember one of the last dreams I had was this paper target started bleeding. I went down and wiped it off. It kept bleeding and kept bleeding and bleeding. And it was at that point I decided I need to be a Muslim because now I see my humanity is coming back. I didn't have humanity for a long time. I didn't know what it was. It came back, and I saw Islam and the teachings from Allah and the examples given by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It gives me something. It gives me an understanding of who, what, when, where, and why. It answered those questions for me, man, and I couldn't have been happier. It was the best decision I've made as an adult.
And when you decided to take Shahada, where did you go first?
Yeah. So this is a funny story. So this whole this whole picture of a lot of Christians throughout the years have had this belief that, if Muslims capture you, they're going to hold a sword to your throat and tell you to convert or they're going to kill you, right? I go back to the Islamic Center on a Friday and I meet two guys, two of the original guys that I was introduced to. And I went up to them and I says, hey, I want to take Shahada. True story. They're standing side by side. They look at each other. They look back at me. Simultaneously, they go, no. True story. Oh my gosh. And I was blown away. I was like, what do you mean no? They said, brother, you got more to learn. So they look back at each other. They look back to me. All right, come on. I just felt like this huge weight, man. This is God lifted off of me. I stood there. I just held out my hands, man. I was like, ah. I don't really know how to explain it. It was renewal. I got a new life now. These people are taking me in. They had no reason to. Knowing I was a soldier, knowing I had been to countries they come from, so they knew some of the things that I had done. But they took me in anyway. They accepted me, right? And I just sat there and I told them all the truth. So this is what I was going to do. And I looked at all of them and said, it's because of you that I didn't. You showed me. Y'all showed me what humanity was. And that saved all our lives. They care. They care because that's the way they were raised, because they were raised by teachings in the Quran.
How was your family affected by your conversion to Islam, and what was their reaction?
After I took Shahada, again, I'm still not telling my wife nothing, right? She knows I'm going to the mosque, but she doesn't know what to think now. And so I go there and I take Shahada. I come home and I just pop down on the couch, kind of like, I just got back from work, something like that, right? And she goes, so is everything okay? Because she's worried that I'm going to do something, right? She has no idea. And I said, no, everything's great. I looked at her and says, I'm a Muslim. She said, what? I said, yeah, I took Shahada. She goes, you sure what? And so in my infant knowledge of Islam, right, I tried to explain it to her the best way I could. She stood there and she said, well, I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm not putting anything around my head. All right. Well, you're not a Muslim, so I didn't even think that was a conversation. It's all right. And then she comes back in a little while and says, and another thing, if you want more than one wife, I'm not going to be one of them. And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I'm not sure I want this one. So she takes Shahada. So they both took Shahada. I was like blown away.
When you look back at your journey of transformation, what do you think about it?
I hated myself because of all the stuff that I'd done. On the outside, acting like everything I'd done was for the right reasons. But deep down inside, I knew it wasn't. I really knew that. I would never have admitted it, but I knew it. And it was eating me up. It was, I was definitely a prime candidate for suicide at that time. In the documentary, Stranger at the Gate, there's a photo of these guys in black uniforms, stuff all over their face, whatever. That was my team. I'm the only one still alive in that team. So everyone in that team had gotten out of the military and had committed suicide. And I felt that way for so long. And this is, again, I have to, this is all Allah working. This is all Allah working. When I first became a Muslim, I asked that question. Why did you make me go through all that? Why? You could have just took me to a bookstore and found a copy of the Quran and started reading it, man. Anything, right? Why did I have to do all that? Now I do have a destiny. I have a purpose now. And I feel like I understand that.
Lastly, if there was a chance to speak to all the non-Muslims in the world, what would you like to say to them if you had a few moments?
I'd say, first thing, take a breath. Take a breath. These feelings you have aren't real. Take a breath. Read the Quran. Just read it. Even if you do not become a Muslim, you will gain wisdom from the words in the Quran. because that's the way the book works.